You know that for thousands of years, the most jaw-dropping Bible prophecy has been hiding right under our noses. It's so powerful that once it's revealed, it will trigger World War III within 24 hours. That's according to multiple sources inside the DoD. And in this short video, I'm going to show you this shocking prophecy. But I'll also explain how understanding it is the one key you need to properly protect and provide for your family in these dark days. Especially once you see how this prophecy is tied to a secret tunnel system mapped by British archaeologists in 1889, but promptly sealed up due to political pressure. How a truly satanic agenda for artificial intelligence will strip Americans of our God-given liberties, all in the name of being for your own good. How this bone-chilling prophecy will force reveal the identity of the Antichrist with near 100% certainty. Once you see and understand how destabilizing this imminent prophecy is, you'll understand that everything you've ever been taught about protecting your family in these last days has been built on a convenient lie birthed in the very pit of hell. Then here's the truth. Protecting and preparing your family for what's about to be unleashed is your responsibility. 2 Timothy 5:8 says it plain as day. But if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. The government isn't coming to save you. The church is weaker than it's ever been, crumbling right in front of our eyes, and the family unit has never been under a more vicious attack. But you already knew that, but what you don't know is the prophecy I'm about to reveal in this video. I'll share how a shock encounter with a renegade seminary professor finally opened my eyes. Plus, I'll reveal exactly how I'm protecting my family from the dark days ahead. I call it the Temple Tunnel Strategy, and I promise it's not anything you've ever seen or heard of before. But that's because it's based on the secret prophecy that's been under the radar for thousands of years. Which means it's the one key to keeping your family safe, secure, and sane in these last days. It's simple yet powerfully effective and cheaper than you'd ever guess. You don't have to spend millions on a doomsday bunker like the media elites are building all over the world right now. You can start using the Temple Tunnel Strategy today because, like Jesus said, no one knows the day or the hour. Any worries and uncertainties you have about your family's future will be a thing of the past, giving you a life of true Christian freedom and an unshakable sense of security and confidence. I don't care if you're a hardcore fundamentalist or a barely believing skeptic. This will work for you and your family. And I understand if you're skeptical right now. I was skeptical too. I mean, how many so-called prophecies were nothing but hot air coming from a money-hungry preacher? But just wait until you see what AI-assisted sonar has revealed. Smack dab in the middle of Israel, right under all our noses, what I'm about to reveal will expose some of the dark plans of the global elite, which means I don't know how long this website will be able to stay online. So make sure and watch this all the way through to the end while you can. Your family's health, well-being, and safety depend on it like never before. For example, you'll discover the little-known survival item that weighs less than 5 ounces, but can purify over 264 gallons of water. How to turn a Home Depot bucket into a fortress that protects your water, food, and gear in any disaster scenario. And it's not what you think. How this simple Jeremiah test can reveal if that friend at church is a true ally, or a leech who will sabotage your family's safety the moment disaster strikes. I strongly believe the more self-reliant families make it through the crisis, the easier it will be to rebuild our nation. But let's back up for a minute so I can introduce myself. My name is Austin Murphy, and I'm a Marine Scout sniper. I've been happily married for 15 years, and I'm the proud father of the 3 most beautiful girls on the planet. We live in rural Arkansas. As you might guess, I spent most of my adult life behind enemy lines in hot zones downrange. Since World War II, Marine Corps Scout snipers have been the elite hidden protectors of our brothers in arms. We're highly trained in marksmanship, concealment, and fieldcraft, and we prepare paying the closest attention to the smallest details, because that's what helps us survive and thrive behind enemy lines. Recognizing the right signs is what brought me home safe and sound to my wife and daughters. Since leaving active duty, I've turned what my wife calls my intense attention to detail into being a survival coach and consultant. Nowadays, I can't do any public live training seminars like I want to, which is why I've been led by God to make my knowledge, training, and skills available to all American families. So my infamous intense attention to detail started to get triggered big time back in early 2020. I was noticing patterns and details that just weren't adding up. Maybe you can relate to questioning the mainstream narrative we watched as a global pandemic was spreading like wildfire around the globe, killing millions. All while civil unrest was destroying our cities, and then the skyrocketing food and gas prices hit, along with runaway inflation that had families everywhere struggling just to survive. Then we saw the ever-present threat of nuclear war rear its ugly head as Russia invaded Ukraine and China set its sights on Taiwan. Again. It's just as Jesus predicted in Matthew 24. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines, pestilences, and earthquakes in various places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Everything is unfolding exactly as Jesus said it would 2,000 years ago. But at the time, the pandemic felt like a first sign of a terrifying string of events. And make no mistake, humanity as a whole has never faced anything like this before. For then there will be great tribulation, such as has not been since the beginning of the world until this time, no, nor ever shall be. Matthew 24:21. In just a moment, I'll show you a brand new biblical prophecy that will send shivers down your spine. Yet in spite of what's been happening before our eyes, you won't hear anything about what's coming next from the mainstream media. And strangely, you don't hear about this from our pulpits anymore either. Our leaders have gone strangely quiet, and there's a very good reason for that, as Jesus said. Then they will deliver you up to tribulation, and you will be hated for my name's sake, and then many will be offended, will betray one another, and will hate one another. Matthew 24:9-10. You see, there is a reason why God left us these very specific prophecies and warnings. Encoded within the words of the final chapters of the Bible is a hidden path to salvation. A way for true believers to survive and thrive during the times of tribulation. Just like Noah built his ark so his family could escape the flood. It truly doesn't matter if you've been a devout Christian, an agnostic, or an atheist. Everyone will be tested. Can you relate to feeling tested over the last several years? But it's only going to get worse, as Jesus said, but he who endures to the end shall be saved. Matthew 24:13. I'll show you how this brand new bone-chilling prophecy will impact and test your family to the extreme in just a few moments. Plus, you'll see the exact steps you can take right now to make sure you and your loved ones can endure to the end and escape these dark days. See, back in early 2020, I was reading my Bible and watching the news, trying to connect the dots. And there in front of me was a glimpse into the future. The worldwide pandemic was specifically prophesied in Revelation 6. It was the first of the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. This white horse ignited my intense attention to detail. So one Sunday after church, before the government told us to close our doors, I sent my wife home with our daughters and locked myself in the church library for the rest of the day. I had dozens of books, commentaries, and notebooks sprawled across the table. I was deep in study when a stranger suddenly sat down across from me. I'd never seen this gentleman before. He was around 65 or so, with long flowing gray hair with a matching beard. He reminded me of a prophet of old. His eyes were aflame with intelligence, curiosity, but also a deep kindness. His worn Carhartt jacket hid his sturdy frame, and his hands were strong and calloused. "Hello, Austin. The pastor told me I'd find you here," he said. Then he asked me if I understood what I was researching, and I told him I felt like I had a few pieces of a puzzle, but not the big picture. I laughed as I told him I felt like a grunt trying to be a Bible expert. Can you relate to studying Bible passages for hours, but that left you scratching your head? He smiled, but applauded my curiosity and desire to understand. He said, "Curiosity can kill the cat, but when you combine it with preparation, it can save your life." As we talked, I came to learn his name was Dr. Alexander Kane, a renegade professor with doctorate degrees in theology, archaeology, and ancient history. He taught for 27 years at one of the largest universities in Arkansas. But then he was encouraged into early retirement due to his non-progressive views on the government, the family, and Bible prophecy. He looked at my notes and started explaining the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse from memory. He told me how each horseman symbolizes the unfolding of horrifying events in the last days. Each event building on the last, a steady, inevitable progression of world destabilization. This sets the stage for a one-world government, and its lone leader, the Antichrist. At first, I was skeptical of his interpretation, but the more we talked, and the more we looked at the pages of Scripture, the more he made sense. He started with the first horseman. I looked, and there before me was a white horse. Its rider held a bow, and he was given a crown, and he rode out as a conqueror bent on conquest. Revelation 6:2. He explained some details I'd completely missed. He pointed out the rider known as Plague was given a crown. and how this plague, or a virus as we know them today, has a crown that looks very much like the protein spikes on the COVID-19 virus. Then he showed me how the crown didn't belong to the rider in the first place. This crown is given. You might remember a certain lab leak theory that governments were quick to try to silence. But it's clear now that we foolish humans played God with nature and gave the rider its crown. But that's not all. He explained how this plague was bent on conquest, a word that means not just to destroy, but to overcome and rule over. Alexander explained how it looks like this plague was designed as a tool of conquest over people's freedoms. Have you ever wondered if COVID-19 was an engineered crisis? Was it meant to condition freedom-loving people to voluntarily give up their freedoms? Was it a trial run for future bigger plans? Or remember how churches all over the world were forced to close, while thousands were given the keys to the city, running rampant in protest, all while destroying businesses night after night? It was a clear sign that this was about conquest and power and making America more vulnerable than ever before. But you might be wondering who's pulling the strings on this power grab. You might think it's the global elite, but you'd be wrong. That's because you need to understand how Dr. Kane explained the second horseman. Then another horse came out, a fiery red one. Its rider was given the power to take peace from the earth and to make people kill each other. To him was given a large sword. Revelation 6:4. Dr. Kane explained how history is filled with colonial occupations where a powerful nation uses force to rule over other nations. Usually it's all about land and resources: Russia and Ukraine, Israel and Palestine, China and Taiwan. Our most recent history proves that we're always on the brink of war. But Dr. Kane explained how what's to come will no longer be about land and physical resources. The target is far more sinister and horrifying. They're coming for your family, but in a way we'd never ever expect. Once you see it, you'll want to do everything in your power to protect your family's safety and liberties. Especially when you consider the third horse, famine. I looked, and there before me was a black horse. Its rider was holding a pair of scales in his hand. Then I heard what sounded like a voice among the four living creatures saying, 2 pounds of wheat for a day's wages and 6 pounds of barley for a day's wages, and do not damage the oil and the wine. Revelation 6:6. Since the beginning of time, whoever controls the supply chain controls the population. It's one of the reasons why America and her allies won World War II. Our supply chain logistics were simply superior, and it helped turn the tide. But get this, did you know that just one corporation supplies the vast majority of food to restaurants and supermarkets in the US? Some estimate that this one conglomerate controls as much as 95% of America's food supply. I won't name this conglomerate because their AI bots have been trained to take down non-favorable websites. Yet we've seen the price of food is increasing almost on a daily basis. All while the quality of food has fallen off a cliff. One NPR poll found that more than 20% of US households had their savings wiped out during the pandemic just trying to survive. According to Revelation 6:6, for a day's labor, someone will receive only 2 pounds of wheat and 6 pounds of barley. That's why this third rider points to future food rationing, especially since Russia and Ukraine together provide 33% of the world's wheat, barley, and sunflower oil. Even more alarming, Russia, China, and Belarus provide 30% of the world's fertilizer. And don't even get me started about oil. According to Svein Tore Holsether, head of agricultural company Yara International, half the world's population gets food as a result of fertilizers, and if that's removed from the field for some crops, the yield will drop by 50%. And David Beasley, the head of the World Food Program, said, "And for me, it's not whether we are moving into a global food crisis, it's how large the crisis will be. Just when you think hell on earth can't get any worse, it does." I'm sure you're seeing the same theme that Dr. Kane was laying out for me. Each horseman wields a different form of control. Health, the threat of war and violence, the food supply. But get this, it only gets worse with the fourth horseman. I looked, and there before me was a pale horse. Its rider was named Death, and Hades was following close behind him. They were given power over a fourth of the earth to kill by sword, famine, and plague, and by the wild beasts of the earth, Revelation 6:8. I asked Dr. Kane if the pale horse was the Antichrist. What he said next blew my mind. He said it's pretty clear that they're all the Antichrist. Each horseman is simply a progression in taking away power, authority, liberty, and freedom from the population. By the time the pale horse shows up, the fourth horseman is simply targeting the remaining 25% of the world population not already under his control. When and how is this going to happen? I asked him. He said, let's talk about the how first. He asked me how much I knew about artificial intelligence. I told him I knew a little bit, and what I understood was scary as heck. Then he asked if I'd heard of Neuralink technology. I told him I knew it was one of Elon Musk's projects, embedding computer technology into people's brains. He told me that they already identified the first group for human trials last year, inviting people with spinal injuries in the hopes of helping them regain mobility. But he told me that there are multiple other companies working on the same technology, many of which are ahead of the curve. This isn't technology that exists in the distant future, it's here now. Right now, this technology is being praised as saviors for people with neurological disorders, spinal injuries, and processing difficulties. But how long before implementation is basically forced on people? I told him that would never happen. That's when he reminded me of the freedoms the world was forced to give up during the pandemic. And it wasn't just the lockdowns. 75% of the world population were basically forced to get the untested, unproven COVID-19 vaccine. For some states, such as Maine and Vermont, those numbers were as high as 95%. I sat there shell-shocked. It definitely felt like the government forced people into taking actions many didn't agree with, for our own good. But then he dropped another bombshell. Could it be that Neuralink technology is the mark of the beast mentioned in Revelation 13? The Antichrist causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and slave, to receive a mark on their right hand or on their foreheads, and that no one may buy or sell except one who has the mark or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Revelation 13, 16, 17. Verse 18 identifies the related number of the beast as 666. Neuralink technology could definitely explain this level of near-complete government control. But Dr. Kane wasn't even close to finished, because that's when he asked me if I'd ever considered what would happen if a rogue AI infected these Neuralink devices. He told him it would likely turn people into good little robots, stripped of all freedom, liberty, and free will. Receiving the mark for your own good is only a step away from receiving a forced vaccine for your own good. My mind was reeling, and I said, but isn't the mark of the beast just for those who worship the Antichrist? He smiled and said, the Greek word for worship in the Bible isn't about singing songs. It means to submit to another's authority. That's when it all made sense. All the details lined up. No one in their right mind would worship the Antichrist or the devil. But forced submission? That's a whole different story. Have you been concerned as you watch more and more of our God-given liberties disappearing year after year? The Four Horsemen is the devil's blueprint in these dark days. I could finally see how the spirit of Antichrist is rolling out the plan to conquer our freedoms one step at a time. So I asked Dr. Kane, when will Antichrist finally be revealed? That's when he explained the prophecy I've been talking about this whole time. Since his forced retirement, Dr. Kane has split his time between Arkansas and Israel. He studies the Torah and the Talmud with the most revered rabbis. He takes part in Israel's national pastime, archaeology. Plus, he works with World Vision, helping bring health services to children whose lives have been torn apart by terrorism. He told me that one day he was studying the book of Jeremiah with one of his rabbi friends, when they came across a prophecy in Jeremiah 3:16, 17. And it shall come to pass when ye be multiplied and increased in the land, in those days saith the Lord, they shall say no more, the ark of the covenant of the Lord. Neither shall it come to mind, neither shall they remember it, neither shall they visit it, neither shall that be done any more. At that time they shall call Jerusalem the throne of the Lord, and all the nations shall be gathered unto it, to the name of the Lord, to Jerusalem. Neither shall they walk any more after the imagination of their evil heart. Dr. Kane explained how, when he read this passage, he got chills running up and down his spine. He realized that Jeremiah was saying that the ark would no longer be visited or even talked about, because the Lord himself would be present in Jerusalem. That's what it means by calling Jerusalem the throne of the Lord. It makes sense that if Jesus the Messiah is ruling and reigning in Jerusalem, well, there wouldn't be any further need for the ark, right? The ark is meant to represent God's presence, not replace it. But when Jesus comes back to conquer Antichrist and make Jerusalem his throne, the ark would be irrelevant, no longer even talked about. But that means that at some point it had to have been found, talked about, and visited in Jerusalem, right? Now, the rabbis have taught for years that finding and displaying the Ark of the Covenant in Jerusalem is the #1 precursor for Messiah's return. That's because the Ark would be a necessary weapon against Antichrist's reign of terror. But no one knows where the Ark of the Covenant is, right? It's lost, I said. But Dr. Kane smiled and said it's only mostly lost. According to rabbinic tradition, Jeremiah, the prophet most directly connected to the Ark, hid the Ark inside a super-secret tunnel system under the Temple Mount. He understood that the Romans were about to conquer Jerusalem and knew he needed to hide and protect it. He did such a good job that it's remained perhaps the world's #1 secret for over 2,000 years. But Dr. Kane then explained how a group of archaeologists in Israel have studied Jeremiah, alongside multiple British surveying reports from the 1880s, which led them to utilize modern sonar instruments made more powerful by AI. The US Navy's been developing AI-assisted sonar for years. It recognizes patterns and anomalies that humans can miss. Archaeologists know all about the many subterranean cisterns and tunnels under the Temple Mount. It's been common knowledge since the 1800s, but they also know that there are many tunnel systems and cisterns that have not been explored or mapped until now. AI-assisted sonar allows archaeologists to see hidden things almost as reliably as with human eyes. Dr. Kane told me that the specialists he's been working with are not yet ready to reveal their findings to the world, because it would 100% unleash World War III because of where it's located. They have strongly and confidently hinted that they have located the Ark of the Covenant, and that they would only reveal it at Israel's greatest need. "What does that tell you, Austin?" Dr. Kane asked. I closed my eyes and thought for a moment, then said that the hour is even later than I suspected, and that if believers are going to survive and thrive behind enemy lines, I have a lot of work to do to get the word out while there's still time. But I knew I couldn't do it alone, so I asked Dr. Kane if we could partner together in order to get the word out to anyone and everyone who has even an ounce of faith in the Bible. So we've spent the last 18 months holed up in Dr. Kane's private library, traveling to and from the Middle East, meeting with biblical scholars, along with survival and family-first experts around the country, putting together the most comprehensive survival and preparation guide for Bible-believing Christians. It's time we all get passionate about recognizing the signs of the times, and make sure we protect our families and our faith in this dark hour. Make no mistake, if these current events are not just coincidences, then the world as we know it is on the brink of untold suffering and death on a massive scale. Imagine being forced to flee your family's home, all while the sound of explosions get closer and closer, praying that the next bomb or missile or shell does not land next to you or your loved ones. Frantic to get as far away as possible, but also not knowing where to go, or when your next meal might be, or where to source clean water, or where you might find some sort of safe shelter, not knowing who you could trust when society is collapsing all around you, fearing that your next breath might be your last. Can you imagine the fear and panic in your wife and children's eyes? Can you imagine them all looking to you, trusting that you'll keep them safe? Can you imagine not having a plan and being just as scared as they are? Look, that does not need to be your fate. Not when the Bible is so clear and all the suffering we are seeing right now is just the beginning of birth pangs. And America will not be immune to untold suffering if a global conflict starts. We all know that America is the only superpower still standing, because we were founded on the principles of freedom and liberty for all. But in so many ways, we've become a paper tiger, weak, divided, and vulnerable, which is why Russia, China, and virtually the entire Muslim world has their sights set on the destruction of America, simply because they oppose, even hate, our freedoms. But I'll show you how you too can maintain your God-given rights and freedoms, as well as survive and thrive behind enemy lines in just a minute. That's because Dr. Kane and I worked our fingers to the bone to develop a one-of-a-kind resource for families just like yours. A book like nothing else out there. Bible-based prepping techniques have never been more important or more vital to our survival. And this is truly unlike anything you've ever seen before. It's called Dark Horizons. And we named it that because never before have Bible-believing families been under greater attack. They're coming to usurp control, authority, and liberty. This book will prepare you and your family for the hardest and most important moments of your life. And it'll do it in a way that follows God's wisdom and guidance. Here's what you'll discover inside. On page 9, you'll see how Noah was the first prepper and what he did right that millions of other preppers out there are doing wrong. Seriously, in chapter 6 of Genesis, God basically tells Moses to build his bug-out vehicle. But I guarantee you there's something you missed when you learned about Noah, and page 10 will make all the difference. Then I'll show you exactly what the beginning of sorrows means. Hint, it means you better be prepared because the rapture will not save you. You'll see why on page 14. On page 36, you'll see why the first horseman, the pandemic, has actually trained us to be better preppers, if you're smart. And then you'll see my exact list of the specific things your family needs to survive the coming catastrophes. On page 28, I'll show you the #1 most vital thing to pay attention to in a crisis. This one thing is responsible for more deaths in dangerous situations than anything else. You'll also see why your faith could be the difference between surviving or failing completely and being at the mercy of outside elements. And I'll also cover all your most vital tasks. How to always have enough food, enough heat and shelter, and everything else you'll need. This is the difference between just barely surviving and actually thriving and building a life. So I want to teach you to not just put your life on pause and struggle to get by. I want to teach you to roll with the punches and adapt and thrive. It's what Marine Scout snipers do best, if I say so myself. For example, it's vital to know when to dig in and make your home a survivable shelter, or when to bug out. Think about how ancient Israel built tunnels and bunkers all over the country. But they also had fortresses to run to in times of great distress, like Masada. They still do this to this day, so I'll teach you how to do the same on page 44. And if you decide to stay, I'll show you how to turn your home into a safe survival retreat that allows you to repel almost all invaders. That's on page 46. God is pretty clear on our rights to defend our homes. If a thief is found breaking in and he is struck so that he dies, there shall be no guilt for his bloodshed. Exodus 22:2. Of course, the most important thing every human on the planet needs is water. Well, I guess we need oxygen more, but that's in God's hands. Water, we can control ourselves. So I'll show you why the experts telling you that you need a gallon of water a day to survive is complete and total BS. Instead, you'll see exactly how much you really need and why on page 49. And then on page 51, you'll see how to harvest more water than you could ever possibly need, even if you have a large family. Plus, you'll see how to safely purify it too. Now, all that's just scratching the surface of what's in this survival treasure trove. Let me rattle off a few more things so you understand how valuable this is. I'd hate for you to miss out because I didn't explain properly. You'll also discover why your trusty satellite phone could get you killed in a crisis if you don't follow this one critical rule, page 23. The counterintuitive survival food that lasts 25 years without refrigeration. Hint, it's not freeze-dried meals, page 42. How to build a virtually undetectable shelter in 72 hours using only materials found in your garage, page 29. Think solar panels are the best way to generate electricity when SHTF. Think again. Discover the cheap alternative that most preppers overlook, page 53. The forbidden survival skill that Navy SEALs are trained in but you'll never hear about. Unlock this one skill and you'll hold the upper hand in any disaster scenario, page 18. Why you should never stockpile antibiotics or painkillers for a societal collapse. The truth might shock you, page 13. Why putting Mylar blankets in your bug-out bag could end up killing you and your family if you don't do this one thing first, page 24. The instant visual test to tell if your water filter is actually working or leaching chemicals into your drinking supply, page 33. Think you need a hazmat suit and gas mask to survive chemical attacks? Think again. This common pantry item works even better, page 15. The counterintuitive place to hide your food stockpile during a societal collapse. It's the last place looters would think to look, page 49. Why Spam and canned ravioli should be avoided at all costs when building your emergency food supply. The truth will surprise you, page 41. The primitive but effective trap that captures small game better than any modern snare. Master this and you'll never go hungry, page 27. Why survival seeds are practically useless unless you do this one simple preparation task first, page 35. Then, as if that's not enough, you'll also have your eyes open too. Why returning to our hunter-gatherer roots would likely mean your family does not survive, and what to do instead. How to fortify your front door and strengthen it so even the most determined looter or scavenger can't get through. How to set up a perimeter in a way that lets you know exactly where the scavengers are and what their intentions are. How to build a paramedic-grade first aid kit at a fraction of the cost. The 12 skills to teach your family so that you can work as a team and survive even the longest crisis, whether it comes from plague, civil war, or whatever the future holds for our beautiful country. How to know what skills you'll need in a community to build a thriving township and get back to civilized life. Simple and inexpensive ways to defend and strengthen every entry point in your home. And I'll be honest, there's still so much more inside. Dark Horizons really is the best possible way to prepare your family for what's coming ahead. It's like having a set of instructions that only you know because you'll be the only family who aren't blindly following regular prepper logic and stockpiling the wrong things. And don't get me wrong, nobody wants to see people suffer, but if it comes to a choice, you'll choose to protect your family over everything else, won't you? Of course, and that's what God wants you to do. Now obviously there are other options out there for handling this coming crisis. You could follow the typical prepping advice advertised on Facebook, YouTube, or Instagram, blindly storing your beans and bottled water and toilet paper and whatever else. Or grabbing the survival bucket at Costco, and that's fine. But it's not really being prepared, is it? It's like throwing a Band-Aid on a gunshot wound. What happens if your food supply gets contaminated? Or if somebody takes your water? You can go from feeling prepared to being up a creek without a paddle very quickly. And it's not like the police will come when you call 911. On the other hand, you could just ignore everything you've seen here today, even though you've seen prophecy after prophecy fulfilled before our eyes. Or you could just kind of try to wing it, be one of those guys who thinks he can figure it out on the fly. Good luck with that. The obvious choice is to just be prepared. That's what we were trained to do as a Marine Scout sniper, survive and thrive behind enemy lines. And that's what Dark Horizons is all about. So how exactly does it work? Well, I made it very, very simple, because let's be honest about it. In these days of technology and mobile phone apps and this and that, we're actually in more danger. Because the power grid is likely the first domino to fall. No power means no technology, no phones, apps, banking, or typical communications, and no more anything. And that's why I kept this old school. Dark Horizons comes as a very simple, downloadable PDF document. Sure, you can put it on your phone or laptop or tablet or whatever else you want, but you can also print it out and keep a copy wherever you need it. I highly recommend printing a copy for everybody important to you, so that when the brown stuff hits the fan, you're not going to struggle with a power outage or anything like that, because you'll still have the printed pages. Simple is usually better, and this goes double in times of crisis. My personal mission is to get this information into the hands of as many people as possible. And in all honesty, in all my previous live trainings, I'd say this: I hope to God you never have to use any of this, but it's here just in case. I don't really say that anymore. This information has become as vital and essential as the air you breathe. Like we said earlier, this verse from Timothy sums it up. But if anyone does not provide for his own, and especially for those of his household, he has denied the faith and is worse than an unbeliever. 2 Timothy 5:8. With what's coming, it's important we do our duty as Christians to do exactly that and provide for our own, no matter how hard things get. That's my reason for putting this in front of you and trying to help you onto the true path. I want to serve my fellow man and help us all get to where we need to be. Now I want to tell you something deep from my heart. If you want to protect your family using God's word during the hardest times we've ever faced as a nation, without that feeling of desperation, like you don't know how you'll survive or keep the family together, you need to download Dark Horizons and get started today. Just having this resource in your hands will give you peace that passes understanding. Once you start putting it into practice, your confidence will soar, and so download it today. I can't put it any plainer than that. Doesn't matter where you live, it doesn't matter what your financial situation is like, it doesn't matter how many kids you have or how busy you are right now, and it doesn't matter what sort of plans you've seen before or how far along you think you are in your preparation. Dr. Kane and I based this on the very latest developments and threats. Now I know all this sounds great, but there is a catch with Dark Horizons. You see, it's literally not available anywhere else. It's not available in any stores. It's not available at Amazon. The only place to get this amazing solution is right here on this page. And reading this page all the way through until the end is the only way you can be sure you get your copy. Think about it. For the people in Ukraine, life changed practically overnight. Everyday Christians became pawns on the global elite chessboard. Don't think that couldn't become us. You should understand by now how naive that is. So I must ask you a question. If you lost power tonight and you lost the phones, internet, water, everything, what would be the first thing you did? What would be the 5th thing you did? What would be the 27th thing you did? Really think about those questions. Now I must apologize because I need to be very blunt with you right now. Some might call it harsh, but Jesus taught us to call a spade a spade. It's best to speak as plainly and directly as possible. The hard, brutal truth is that if you don't know the first 20, 30 things you need to do when the crisis happens, then your family is already in jeopardy. And what does that look like when the brown stuff hits the fan? The first task of each day will be for you to find water, enough for all your family members, and it needs to be clean, pure, and drinkable. Where would you get water right now if your tap stopped working and there were no stores? And then you'll need food, you'll need warmth or shelter from the heat if you live in one of the hotter states. You'll need first aid supplies and medicines. You'll probably need them much sooner than you'd think. It's going to be rough. And the answer is not to stockpile all those things. Stockpiling causes more problems than it solves, and in my guide you'll see exactly why. But here's the thing, your family does not need to be in jeopardy. With the help of Dark Horizons, you could actually put your family in a position to thrive. You could already have your water, food, and first aid solutions figured out. You could already know how you're going to cool or heat your home. You could already know that your family will be one of the safe families in your area because of all the work you've put in now. So in just a moment, I'll reveal exactly how to get your hands on this amazing guide that's already helping so many other people. But first, I want to ask you a question. Because let's be honest, you can have the peace of mind of knowing that you are doing everything to protect your family and make them feel secure, no matter what happens. That would be great, wouldn't it? So now the big question is, do you want that peace of mind in your life? If not, you can go ahead and close this page before I go any further. But if you do, how much is it worth to you? How much is it worth to truly protect your family? To use the words from the Bible to provide the safety and support that you know your family deserves? How much is it worth to have a plan in place for the times of tribulation? At that moment, you'd probably pay anything to make it stop, wouldn't you? For most people, they'd pay thousands, and it's worth thousands to protect your home and all your possessions. You already pay thousands a month to provide safety and security for your family. You already provide food and shelter for those you love, right? It's baked into our everyday lives, but most Christians haven't given near enough thought to providing for their families when the SHTF. Thankfully, getting fully prepared doesn't have to cost you that much. It won't cost you even a month's mortgage or rent payment, even though this information is easily worth that much, and sure, you could go it alone, trying to figure out all the individual techniques and tricks for yourself. First of all, that'll take you more time than we likely have. Besides, don't you think that's a bit risky? And do you honestly want to guess at something that might be the difference between a family member living or dying? Personally, I'd prefer to follow a tried and true path, the Lord's path, and so I want to give you the opportunity to do that affordably right now. Because of this, Dark Horizons has been priced as affordably as possible. Hardworking Americans deserve to have a resource like this that won't break the bank. You could be forgiven for thinking it would cost you hundreds of dollars to get access to these valuable secrets. After all, the peace of mind of your family is at stake, not to mention knowing that your home and all your valuables are safe, and that's worth hundreds of dollars easily, isn't it? Now, don't get me wrong, it would still be completely worth it even if it cost hundreds of dollars to train you in these little-known techniques. But here's the thing, it's actually nowhere near that expensive. You see, I really do want to help people, which is why I've priced it the way I have. And it's also why I'm offering my exclusive Scout Sniper guarantee. Look, I'm a man of my word, and that means I'm not afraid to put my money where my mouth is. I wouldn't have it any other way. Here's how that works. Go ahead and download Dark Horizons right now, knowing you're protected by my 60-day satisfaction guarantee. Which means you've got 60 days to try it out, 60 days to go through the entire guide and see if you like it, see if you think it will help you and your family. If it helps you and you believe it will give you the Lord's guidance in those darkest of all times, then that's great. That's exactly what I'm hoping for, but if you're not satisfied with it, if you don't think all those secrets and little-known survival details are going to be helpful for you and your family, let me know and you'll get a full and prompt refund. I honestly don't believe I deserve your money if you don't think Dark Horizons will help set you and your loved ones up to get through these dark times safely. So it doesn't matter if you already have this specialized knowledge, and it doesn't matter if you simply don't like it. Just let me know within 60 days and you get your money back. It's Scout's honor. Now, I promise to tell you exactly how much this will cost you. I'm about to spill the beans right now, but I have to warn you, it's way less than you're probably thinking. Even though there's thousands of dollars of life-saving material in there, I won't charge you that, or even hundreds. Today you have the chance to download Dark Horizons now for just $37. No, I'm not joking, that's honestly all it costs if you claim it today. $37 for unlimited access to information that very well may save your life. Even if you only use the guide for a year, that would work out to just $3.08 per month. That's literally 10 cents a day. Would you pay a dime a day for a done-for-you survival plan built specifically for these dark days? Let's think about this for a second. What else could you get for $37? A dinner for you and your wife? Maybe. A handful of groceries? My point is $37 isn't exactly a life-changing amount of money. And would that dinner or those groceries have such a life-saving impact on your life? Probably not. I mean, you buy them without even thinking about it because it's not that much money. Do you remember what you ate last time you went out to dinner? Or do you remember exactly what you got last time you spent $30 or $40 on groceries? I know I don't remember those things, and you probably don't either, and the reason we don't remember those small purchases is because they don't have much impact on our lives. but this could. A dime a day at $3 a month and $37 total. It's a no-brainer if you think about it like that, especially knowing you'll get your money back if it doesn't work the way you want it to. On top of that, when you order today, I'm going to throw in 2 bonus books I know you're going to love, 100% free. The first is our 30-day emergency plan book. Inside, you'll find the top 10 must-have items to ensure safety for 30 days. After disaster hits, people desperately seek supplies, and they might do anything to get them. People can turn into bold, irrational, and sometimes violent beings. They need to keep their own families safe, so if you have the necessary supplies, you could easily turn into a prime target. I don't want to see that happen to you or your loved ones. Now, I know that all this can seem scary for some people, and honestly, getting a grip on the situation is key to making sure you and your family are safe. I don't want you to worry if you're going to make the wrong decision when the walls come crumbling down. Because the first hours and days of an emergency are the most important. Just like in a kidnapping, what you do immediately has the greatest impact. That's why I'm also going to give you a free copy of my emergency-altering book, Survival Mindset. In it, I cover some of the most crucial steps to take when faced with impossible life and death decisions. Plus how to keep you cool when injured, hungry, exhausted, dehydrated, or cornered. There's no substitute for being able to execute the plans you have already come up with. And you can only do that if you're prepared mentally. When I was on active duty, I'd been prepared to know exactly what to do in worst-case scenarios. It was part of our mindset training, and I knew how to keep my wits about me and how to execute my emergency plan. I knew what to do to keep me and my team from getting captured or left out in the cold without supplies, hurt and stranded, or worse. And now it's my civic and patriotic duty to help countless other good Christians like yourself do the same. Look, I've done my best to make this an absolute no-brainer for you, and whether you realize it or not, you're standing at a crossroads. On your left is the future you have now. Things may seem fine, but how will your plans stand up when these dark days get darker? Do you really know, and is that something you want to gamble on? But that's the path you're on now, and if you continue along that path, you're literally gambling with the safety of those you love. So you can choose that. Along with the fear, the uncertainty, the blind hope that you've planned in a way that stands up to the plagues, war, to the famine, to all the things that could be happening to us in the next 12 months. Or you can make the smart choice, the choice I wish everybody had, the choice I want everybody to take, the choice to grab dark horizons right now, the choice to have plans that actually work and prepare for these dark horizons as God intended. The choice seems easy, and especially when you consider that you get your money back if it doesn't work for you. So click that button below to place your order and claim the certainty of God's word for yourself. Now, if you're still watching, I want to level with you. We've been on a journey together here, and you've seen how everything we're going through was spelled out almost word for word in the scriptures, for those who were smart enough to pay attention. You've seen how we're in very real danger from multiple sources, and how today's liberal news media, in my opinion, is simply not telling us the truth, and how most churches today are just so out of touch with the reality of where we are on God's prophetic timeline. But you've also seen how it's possible to get a set of plans and biblical instructions that'll help you be ready when the moment comes. And lastly, you've seen the 2 most important things. Number 1, that you can begin seriously protecting your family for just a dime a day. And number 2, that if you don't like Dark Horizons, or you're not happy with the information inside it, you'll get every penny refunded. So you have no risk. 0 risk and a whole lot of peace of mind to gain. Now it's time for you to make a decision. We've come on this journey together so far, but I can't take this next step for you. It's up to you to make the decision to protect your family for real, in the way God wants you to. So hit the button below and claim your copy today. The times are changing. You know it. We all know it. It's right there in the book. This is your chance to get ahead of it.